Yep, give it a little bit of a push because you got a little bit of texture. And now it's gonna start, now your section's up and you're at 2 bars, so you can go and pick it up.
We're at Roll the Concrete for 2025 and we're in the DeWALT booth. And I've spotted something that I haven't been able to get my hands on. You've wanted it, and now we have it on the channel. We have an expert. Rob is going to tell us all the information.
Yeah, so quiet impact. This is the DCF 870, right? So small format, very similar to the 850. You guys have tried the 850 before. Difference in this is hydraulic, right? So we call it quiet hydraulic. It is the most powerful hydraulic unit impact driver that's out there, right? Against all the competitors. So 500 inch-pounds. A lot of people look at impacts and they say that's super low. All hydraulic units, they work differently, right? So one of the differences you're gonna see in this, we don't have spring mechanisms. We're dealing with hydraulic fluid that's pushing through veins.
Okay.
So one of the unique things about that is, a couple things, it gives you more control, right? So one of the nice things about that, especially if you're doing finer screws, all the way up to deck screws, it gives you a lot of that capability. In control, you also have 2 speeds. So instead of it being 3, there's just 2 speeds. There's a high and a low.
Okay.
That third setting is actually just the light setting that's on it, right? So some folks don't want the light on. They're maybe working in an environment where you got a lot of reflective material. They want to be able to turn that off so it's not on for 20 minutes.
That's a
but
nice
you have the
feature
ability to be able to have it on there.
Yeah.
You do have a brand new LED system on the front too.
Pretty wicked.
But probably the more important thing, like when we talk around hydraulic, the control thing is one, but the other one is consistent torque. So with a traditional, right, like our XR unit, you guys have tried the 870 or the 860 out, I think.
860, yep. We've had them all except for that one right there.
When you look at a traditional impact rate, you got your anvil on the front end, you got your hammering mechanism, and then also what you have in there is you have a spring-loaded system in there.
Okay.
So one of the things that's different in this is, like I was mentioning, you have hydraulic fluid that's going through veins essentially. So in that, what that does is you get consistent torque. That's the nice thing about this. And that consistent torque translates both in fastening, but also it's going to transition when you're drilling also.
Okay.
So if you got like a spade bit or you're putting an impact ready drill bit in there and you're going through metal, whatever, you're not going to actually hear that spring mechanism collapsing constantly. And that hence also quiets the sound. So it's not just because of the hydraulic fluid that's keeping it quiet, it's actually that the mechanism itself that's quieter in general.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, right?
Yeah.
You're describing a hammer and anvil in here, which creates more max torque, but there's spikes. Yeah. So there's a high amount of torque and then drop off. High amount of torque, drop off. Whereas this is just a more flat line.
It's a more of a flat line consistency, right?
Yes.
So if you looked at it, that's what you're gonna see in a hydraulic unit. Where this guy, you're gonna see that up, and you'll see that drop, and then you're gonna see an up, and then you're gonna see that drop. Where this is that consistency. So that's when you look at, like, either it's gonna be the 845 like this, or you look at the 860, you're gonna get that 2,500 inch-pounds, right? Yeah. And you're gonna see that it's just gonna go up, down, up, down, up, down, because of that hammering mechanism constantly going back and forth. When you're doing it with hydraulic, you're pushing the fluid through those veins, and that's where you get there's just that consistent torque all the way through.
So I have a question then. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but if I heard you correctly, you'll be able to complete more precise work with this.
Yeah,
as well.
That's where that control piece comes into. Like that's where you get into the control. One of the things that you're going to see is it's a very smooth transition because you don't have that hammering mechanism that spring collapsing.
Makes sense.
So I always bring it up to that scale. When you look at an impact driver and impact wrench, they're working the same way. Mechanisms are just getting bigger, right? So if you grab, like, say our large impact wrench in our XR line, all you're doing is that hammer mechanism and your spring is just getting bigger. It's getting wider in girth and also in length. So that's where you're getting that noise from, right? It's not just putting hydraulic fluid in a traditional system. The mechanism is a completely different system inside.
Gotcha.
So that's where you get a lot more control. So whether, like I said, doing a deck screw, or you're doing like cabinet install and you're doing that really refined work, you get that consistency in it, and you get a little bit more control as you go down in speed 2, or down into speed 1, you get a little bit more control.
Look, what are we seeing in the real world as far as driving those fasteners?
Yeah, so when you start getting into, like, well, let's just look at timber screws, right?
Yeah.
you guys are doing tests all the time. You do timber screws, you do deck screws, all that. What you're going to see is that our traditional, like in the 860, it's going to blow this out of the water every single time.
Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
Because it's got 2,500 inch-pounds. But what you're going to see in this is consistency in smaller diameter stuff, right? So like your larger, like 3/8 timber screws, that's where 860 is going to come in. But if you have somebody that's like working in, say, like the MRO space and maintenance, repair, and operations, they're working in a hospital and nursing home, this is 60% quieter than our traditional impact, right? Yes. So that's where you're going to see there's that advantage.
I would think that every contractor becomes a contractor because they love running tools, right? So every once in a while, if we're doing a rollout project or there's an opportunity on second or maybe even third shift, I'll run my business during the day and then I'll go and work with the guys at night. But I did always have one criteria: no impact drivers, because it was too much.
Oh, it's booming, yeah.
And I would prefer hydraulic. A lot of the commenters said I was being like, you know, just being a complainer about it. But if I have the opportunity to use something that's quiet and get the job done, why wouldn't I do it?
It's purpose built based on the user and their criteria, what they're looking for. Not saying this can't do timber screws, right? It's gonna do the application. If I'm replacing 3/8 or 1/2 inch lags with timber screws that are out there that are code compliant, this is gonna be able to do it, right? It's just gonna do it at a slower pace, but very consistent every single time.
Quiet.
If you're looking for speed, that's where 860 is gonna come in. So it's based on the work, and that's why we're very purpose driven in what we're doing.
Well, this looks interesting. What do we have?
This is the DeWALT Grabo lifter. So this is gonna allow you to be able to pick up all of your, really, you talk about drywall, talk about like diamond plate, talk about acrylic, tile. Tilers love this thing, right?
You know what? I would tell you, I would love this thing. 10 years ago, we used to do a ton of fixture installs for I'm not gonna name the brand name, but they're heavy steel fixtures. We would install them and there was nowhere to grab. All flat sides. We used to have to use manual, like suction cup style. Yeah. This would have helped.
One of the neat things about this, right, is that we've built in the ability to know your PSI rate or bar. So if you're in Europe, you're working off, you want to know bar rate, it'll do that too.
I was gonna say PSI is where I live. Bar, it's above my pay grade. I don't know anything about bar.
Hey, but but it also is going to give you an indicator of what your battery life's at.
Perfect.
Right? In that also, as we built in, there's a sensor. If there's not enough battery charge, you're down to 1 bar. I'm below 25%, it's not going to allow it to turn on. Awesome. So you're not going to be in a situation. But one of the things, it's continuous suction. So even if you're working on like drywall is somewhat porous, right? Based on what drywall you're working with. Some of your stuff that's going to be green, right? That's going to be more moisture driven, thicker base paper. It's going to be not as porous than standard drywall is, right? So one of the nice things is going to keep a constant suction. One of the things is as you get into things like steel, we put this down, give it a little bit of a push because we've got
it's diamond plate, right? So it's not completely flat.
Yeah. So the beauty about this is, right, you can do glass and other products too, down to 4 millimeters, right? You want to stay away from curved glass with this. We recommend no curved glass.
Is there a potential to crack it or break it?
Yeah. Anytime you put suction to, and even with a manual suction cup, you really want to be careful with it because you can potentially crack. So you'll see that it gets up, right? And it's going to give you these 4 bars.
Okay.
So right now it's running continuously. And what you're going to see is essentially when you're at 2 bars, you're good to pick up. Now, when it's at 4 bars, 265 pounds up. Now, when you're holding it horizontal, if I'm holding a piece of, say, like form board, now I have 132 pounds that I have the ability to be able to do. So one of the nice things is you can't actually mistakenly hit this button, it shuts off on you.
Right.
So you got that, you're working by yourself and you're hauling it. You always have to go green button first, and then we have actually a safety switch on here. You have to push forward and then down.
It's pretty much like, you know, when you're using the computer and you try to delete something and they're like, do you absolutely want to do this?
Yeah.
It saves you.
It's one of those nice, it's a really nice thing. Again, gasket system, it's gonna be a foam base and then a rubber. This is a replaceable part. So this actually just gets pulled out. You can replace this. This is the biggest thing, is making sure this is cleaned off, right? As long as you clean this off, you're gonna be good. If you get a tear in it, replaceable parts.
So here's the thing for me, especially like with tile, and I, you know, going from like polished fixturing to something with tile where there could be some type of, you know, sediment, where it could be abrasive. right? You know, being able to replace this, make sure that you have all the suction you need and it's not degraded. I like that.
And the one of the things that you'll notice is when we say 265 pounds, you're like, who's picking up 265 pounds by themselves?
Isn't it pulling force, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pulling force on it. Not a lot of people are going to be picking something up in a vertical fashion, 265 pounds. If you are, you're probably going to have some back problems. What we're looking at though too, in that whole factor, is when we're talking about 265 pounds, you could actually now have somebody else have another one. You could be picking up the whole entire countertop, right? The biggest thing with this, it's not necessarily about lifting capacity all the time. It's you're putting a handle on something that doesn't have a very good grip in space.
Absolutely.
You know better than anybody. There's tile that's out there. It's 2 foot by 4 foot, and tile's getting even bigger in the commercial space. When you're laying that type of tile down, you're talking about something that's about 130, 120 pounds. So that's that space that we're always looking at, where when you're laying that tile down, you don't want to just get down and just go boop.
Here's the other thing. Once you lay it down, you don't want to have to pick it back up.
No.
So the more precision you can put it down with the first time, I like having a handle. Do you prefer traditional style impact drivers or hydraulic? Wow. That wood, or as Clint would say, the woodage, it's not cooperating. Quick insert collet. And now that we've had it on the channel, let us know down in the comment section below. We want to know, leave it all below. With that, I want to say I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Thanks a lot, everybody. Hope to see you all on the next one.